What's up, planner friends? This is Anne from the Stationery Junkie. For this video, I'm going to be talking about something that has been bothering me for a couple of weeks now, mainly because of the talk that has come around Hobonichi and the thing about Sanzen Tomoe River Paper. And I'm not sure if you've known it. Maybe you have seen all of this discussion about the quality of Sanzen TRP and whether this is the end. Maybe I am being overly dramatic, but it's just crazy how things have spiraled down, mainly from Hobonichi's launch fiasco and now with the issues surrounding the paper quality. And I have here a couple of planners that I have acquired very recently. Some of them have Tomoe River Paper Sanzen. They're all 2025 books. And very interestingly, I also have some planners out here that are made of Bachuan or Bachuan paper. The reason why I wanted to have this video to discuss about paper quality because I feel that these two types of paper, as I've learned through some sleuthing around online, that Bachuan or Bachuan paper is Tomoe River Paper. And this is the cause of my conundrum. Whether is it true that Bachuan paper is the same as Tomoe River Paper? I did some sleuthing around, but before I get to some of the specifics, I just want to talk about Tomoe River Paper first. I think for most of us who have been using the likes of Hobonichi, this is a very popular brand of planner. And also take a note that I have here. These two planner companies have been using Tomoe River Paper, and also very recently some US-based planner companies like Owl Paper have been using the same kind of paper material, and also the likes of Sterling Ink, Wonderland, and all of these planner companies and journal makers who are using this kind of paper. And if you are watching this video, I'm sure you are very familiar with Tomoe River Paper because everybody and their cat is using Tomoe River Paper for their notebooks and journals. But basically, based on what I have research online, Tomoe River Paper has had its history rooted in Japanese craftsmanship. It was first developed by Tomoegawa Co. Limited. It's a Japanese paper manufacturing company, and their heritage dates back to 1914. So this company has been around for a long time. And the origins of Tomoe River Paper can be traced to the mid-20th century as a response to the changing demands of the market. So the heritage of this company, Tomoegawa, the one that created and manufactured Tomoe River Paper, has been around for a long time. As you know, for those of you who are into planners, notebooks, stationery, fountain pens, and the like, people have been singing praises. There's a cult following for Tomoe River Paper because of its features, which is the paper having such thin quality, smooth to the touch. And when you use your writing instruments, it just is like chef's kiss, in the sense that the characteristics of your inks are fully shown on the paper, sheening, shimmering, and all of this other great qualities of inks are showcased very beautifully on this type of paper. And at the same time, it retains such thin quality. It's very smooth. The paper quality is also very durable to a certain extent. The sound that it makes when you use writing instruments such as fountain pen inks, and for those of you who used watercolor, I've been seeing a lot of people who really love the sound of leafing through the pages of a Tomoe River Paper planner or journal. So there's just a lot of like very good things about this paper. And if you may not have known, when the pandemic struck, Tomoegawa suffered quite heavily in terms of its business. in a sense that, as you know, logistics, shipping, and overall global businesses have suffered greatly when it comes to shipping and logistics and getting their products across the world. And it's no different for Tomoegawa. They got hit pretty bad with the economic effects of the pandemic, that they had to shutter their business in the paper manufacturing. And this is something that I have gleaned from online resources, how it came about that the original Tomoegawa Tomoe River Paper just disappeared. Not really disappeared, but they discontinued it because of economic reasons. But then Sanzen stepped up to take the cudgels of producing or continuing to produce this paper for the market, and that's the reason why you have Sanzen Tomoe River Paper right now. And from what I have learned, Sanzen continued to create this paper, but the ingredients or the way of producing it is now different from the way Tomoegawa uses it or produces it. And it also has something to do with not just the way they produce the paper, but also the machine that is being used to create these kinds of paper are now different. That is the reason why there is a difference in the quality of Tomoe River Paper of years ago to the ones that we have now from, I guess, 2024 or like tail end of 2023 to today in 2024. And now we are approaching 2025 with most of these planner companies now fully adopting Sanzen, except perhaps for the likes of Wonderland, that Wonderland has stocked up on the OG Tomoegawa TRP. And that's the reason why their 2025 planners are still using the old Tomoe River Paper. But the rest of the planner companies are now using Sanzen, including, take a note, including Hobonichi. Just to quickly backtrack a little bit for Hobonichi, 2024, their January start weeks were still using Tomoegawa TRP. And in their spring release, they now had to shift to Sanzen. It has something to do with their stock of the paper. But 2025 onwards, Hobonichi is now on using Sanzen. So there is the very quick, maybe long-winded history of Tomoe River Paper and how it has come about this time around for us planner people. But very interestingly, these planner companies, particularly Kinbor, and this Taiwanese planner company or stationery company called Chuyu Culture, is using Bachuan or Bachuan paper. And according to some of the people who can read Japanese and simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese, these characters refer to Japanese Tomoe River Paper. This is Chuyu Culture. And this is Kinbor. And according to the listing of Kinbor, they use Bachuan as well. And this is where the headache starts, because I wanted to understand, is Bachuan paper really Tomoe River Paper? And it's very difficult to find related literature about Bachuan paper online. There's very little information, and from what I have learned, Bachuan paper is a premium handmade paper originating from traditional Chinese paper making techniques. So it may not be widely recognized as some other popular papers like Tomoe River or Rhodia, which is Clairefontaine. It has carved a niche for high quality texture and durability, as some of the resources that I have seen have said. And they compare Tomoe River Paper very closely with Bachuan paper, saying that Tomoe River Paper, as we know, is incredibly thin yet strong quality that enhances the ink vibrancy and minimizes ghosting. I'm talking about Tomoegawa Tomoe River Paper, and to a certain extent Sanzen as well. But Bachuan paper also offers a more substantial texture that provides a sturdier writing experience. And I will talk about these things. I will do a very in-depth comparison of these two paper qualities. I'm just trying to state some of the things that I found out online about these two papers. Bachuan paper holds up well in terms of durability and resistant to ink bleed, as the resources say. And it is a great alternative for those who enjoy heavier paper with a more artisanal touch, as it says. And I also posed this question on Reddit, whether Bachuan is or not, or is not Tomoe River Paper. And to cut the long story short, they said that it is, but I don't know, guys. To me, it still feels like it's not. The reason why I say it is because pricing. This one is, I forgot the exact costing of Hobonichi Weeks versus the Kinbor. But if you compare head to head, whether it's an A6, A5, or a Weeks, Hobonichi, and Kinbor is definitely a lot cheaper than Hobonichi. And if it is truly Tomoe River Paper, which is the Japanese quality paper, how come it is still sold in such a cheap price, right? But the people at Reddit said something about fees in taxes, shipping, costings, and the like, which I would understand. But if Tomoe River Paper is made in Japan and Hobonichi is the Japanese brand, the cost is like, I don't know why. It's so expensive. But I think you also have to factor in other costs like collaboration fees. Like if they collaborate with other artists, of course they have to pay the artists a certain fee, and that will also translate to passing down the cost to its customers. So I would say probably that's the reason why Hobonichi is quite expensive compared to Kinbor, because as far as I know, I'm not sure, it's not as expensive. And if you take a look at the listing of Kinbor in AliExpress, they do have some collaborations with Disney. You know, Disney is a big brand. It's also, if you want to license their name, their brand, and their characters, that's probably going to cost a hefty fine as well. But the costing of their notebooks and journals and planners is incomparable with Hobonichi, which is like super expensive now that Hobonichi has jacked up the price because of currency differences, currency differences. So, but then Kinbor remains to be very affordable and a good alternative to Hobonichi. People say it's a dupe. I would say to a certain extent, yes, because Kinbor is known to have adopted the layouts of Hobonichi and the likes of Kokuyo for some of their planners. But if you're looking at Kinbor online in AliExpress, I would like to make a quick note that not all Kinbor planners are made of Bachuan paper. You have to check the actual listing if it does, because other undated Kinbor planners are not made of Bachuan paper. So just a quick FYI on that. That is the thing that I have with pricing. So I guess to a certain extent the people at Reddit are correct in terms of like shipping, costing, licensing, whatever. But I'm still confused whether it is truly Tomoegawa or not. If it's like the same kind of paper that we're using in Hobonichi's Take a Note, Owl paper, Sterling ink, yada yada. I'm going to be doing a pen test on Bachuan and Tomoe River Sanzen using the planners that you're seeing here today. So let's get right into it. Before I compare Tomoe River and Bachuan paper side by side, I'm just gonna quickly do a overview of the Sanzen papers in these three different planner companies that you're seeing right now. So this is Owl paper, this is Hobonichi Weeks, and this is Take a Note A6. And I'm using mostly the same inks and pens across all of the books that I will be talking about in this video. So if you have seen my Owl paper planner review, I've already done the pen test for that planner, and the fact that it is performing the same or very similarly to the 2023/2024 books or planners. So I would say the Sanzen performance here is very good in a sense that the ghosting is minimal. There is no bleed through. And the one that is heavily ghosting is this stamp that you're seeing right here, which is very expected of Tomoe River paper. Even in the Tomoegawa version, you would always see such a heavy show through of stamps. But in terms of fountain pens, in terms of fountain pens that I have here, I have very wet and juicy pens that you're seeing here in various nibs. in using different inks as well that are dry or wet. When you look at it on the other side, the show through is still workable. It is something that I can still work with. I can still use this page to write, and it's not gonna be wasted space. Even more so with the gel pens of 0.38, 0.5 nib sizes, and the Pigma brush, the mild lighter, and the Tombow. But just a caveat, the ones that I have are muted colors of the mild liner and Tombow. So if you are using a bit more vibrant color for the mild liner and Tombow, I would say it could still perform the same way, but since I prefer muted colors, I don't want something that's screaming too loud in terms of color. I'm very happy with the performance because there's like very, very minimal ghosting on this part. Even the color dots, Zig Clean color dots, are performing really well in this paper. And I very recently also did a swatch of my pens in the Hobonichi Weeks, and looking at the fountain pens that I have, they are all quite juicy and wet. Same thing that I've used in the owl paper. The paper quality, or even the pens or inks that I've used, they display the properties of the ink very well. There is no feathering at the front part, but when you flip to the other side, I would say the ghosting is still okay. I think I got a good batch for Hobonichi in this week's book, which is, I'm really grateful for that, because even if my broadest nib is doing fine, my 1.5 stub nib from Lamy is also doing okay, the TWSBI Echo stub is also okay, and all of my gel pens, you can take a look. I mean, there is ghosting, but it's not horrible. It's still usable, right? Even with the mild liners. The stamp, I expect this already. You can see it really well. But the good thing is the ink has not gone through the paper, which is absolutely great. But I will not be using stamps for Tomoe River Paper because I live in a very tropical, humid climate, and I know that weather or the humidity can affect the performance of stamp inks. Regardless of the stamp inks or stamp pads that I use, it just bleeds through the paper in a very humid environment. So that's Hobonichi Weeks. And very recently, I just did a review of this A6 mini from Take a Note. Please check out that video if you haven't yet. And I also did some swatching of my inks here, including the stamp. And when I turn to the other page, I would say this is 68 GSM. This one, as far as I know, 47 GSM. And then Night Owl or Owl Paper is 52 GSM. But this 68 GSM, the gel pens and the rollerball pen is fine. Mild liner, Tombow, color dot is all fine. I would say, I'm not sure if it's picking up by the camera. This particular line, this is the Lamy Safari stub nib. There is the ghosting. There are certain strokes that the ink pulls, and I can see a bit of a show through on certain portions of the downstroke. So I think when the ink pulls, it gets to the back of the paper, which is very strange because the first ink that I have is a bold nib, but it's a Atramentis ink, which is, I would say, a fast dryer kind of ink. But then the show through is quite okay. But then when I look at the Lamy Safari 1.5 stub, I can see certain portions of the thing that I wrote here. So it's very curious that a 68 GSM TRP is doing this. But the stamp is fairly the same as the Hobonichi Weeks and the Owl Paper. But I would say the paper is still fine because I don't use the stub nib frequently, only as a header. So I would say it is still usable. I would probably use the stub nib not so often or on certain occasions, only when I need to write a header. But other than that, it performs really well. So I guess I am lucky when it comes to the draw in terms of getting a good batch of Sanzen TRP. So now we get to the Bachuan paper planners. This is Kinbor and this is Chuyu culture. Chuyu is a Taiwanese stationery company. They create planners, notebooks, and other stationery stuff that is, I would say they're kind of like the Hobonichi of Taiwan, because they not just create or produce planners and journals and notebooks, they also have school supplies that I know that Hobonichi does as well, other accessories. So what I love about this company is the fact that it's Taiwan made, but when you buy planners from them, they come with the cover already. And this one that I bought comes with the cover and the cover on cover, which is very ideal. And the price of this in USD, I believe, is around $20-ish, not even $30. And this is including the cover. This is a fabric cover with a cover on cover. So very economical, very reasonably priced. And the fact that this is Bachuan paper, they say is very similar to Tomoe River Paper. I think that's a steal. But they also create other planners that do not use Bachuan paper, and that's even more reasonably priced. So, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using the one that they sell with Bachuan paper. And Kinbor, I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of them. They are the dupe to Hobonichi, very close dupe of Hobonichi. And the one that I have here is their snake skin like cover. I actually wanted the cat brown one, and they also have a green cover with the bamboo design, but I picked this up anyway because it is holographic. I like that, and it's very unique, I would say. So these two are my Bachuan paper notebooks and planners. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at the pen test that I did for the Kinbor. So again, these are the pens that I've used, stamp as well. So when I turn to the other page, also very good, except for, of course, the infamous stamp that is still super visible. I'm not going to be doing that. As much as I own quite a number of clear stamps and wooden stamps, I'm not going to be using them in this paper. I guess very sparingly, unless I'm gonna be putting some stickers at the back of this page, because if I use stamps all the time, I'm not gonna be able to read through some of the things that I will write on the opposite end of the page. But as you can see, let me just go through it again. The ghosting is, I would say, a lot more minimal than Hobonichi, but let me just go through the Bachuan paper separately so that you can see the performance. Even with fountain pen ink, it works really well. Moving to the A6 Chuyu planner, this is like a 1 page a day, very similar to the Hobonichi A6 as well. There are no weeklies, it's just a monthly and a daily that you're seeing here. There are a couple of trackers and yearly overviews at the front, but it's basically the same layout as Hobonichi A6. Let me just go through my pen test. So this is the pen test that I have. Also very similar, the same kinds of writing instruments that I've used in the other planners. It displays the ink quality very well for fountain pens and also for this stamp. When I flip over to the next page, the back page, I'm not sure if that's picking up, but these two fountain pens, which is the 1.5 stub and the Lamy LX fine fountain pen, there are certain points of the ink where it's already going through the other page. Very interesting. But the rest of the inks and pens are fine. The gel pens are doing great, whether it's 0.4, 0.5, 0.3, they're great. The zig color dot is fine. No, unless you press really hard on the zig color dot, it's also gonna seep through, but I advise not to press too hard or let the pen stay too long on the paper, or otherwise it will definitely bleed. But I think compared to Kinbor, this one has very questionable performance because of some of these wetter pens that I have here, which is a stub and the fine nib by Lamy. In the other book, in the Kinbor one, it doesn't perform this way, and as expected, the stamp is seeping through, but it's not bleeding through, but the show through is quite noticeable again, performs across all the papers that way. So there you have it. Okay, for this next one, I'm going to directly compare Hobonichi with Kinbor. This is Kinbor, the white paper, and this is Hobonichi, the yellow one. If you take a look, I would say at the back of this page, the performance of the ink, the fountain pen inks here on the Kinbor and on the Hobonichi Weeks are fairly the same. But I would say the performance of these papers are very similar. I'm happy that there is just no bleed through. I'm just relieved that I don't have the same problems as some who have had some horror stories with their A5, their Hobonichi 5-year diaries. The inks are bleeding through. Even the gel pens, which I do not understand, but I'm so happy that this one is performing really well. But let me bring in the Chuyu. I'm not sure if you're seeing it. I hope that you are. I would say the Chuyu Bachuan paper may just be a tad different in terms of the ink seeping through the paper. The Lamy fountain pens are the ones that are a little bit showing through. The ink is like, the pooled ink is like coming out of the other end of the paper, whereas the Sanzen and Bachuan of Kinbor is not. So, and then let's take a look at the 68 GSM of Take a Note. So there, I hope you're seeing it. I think there's not a lot, at least on the 68 GSM Tomoe River Paper of Take a Note compared to Hobonichi, Kinbor. So at least between the three of these, they're performing really well with fountain pen inks. And lastly, with my owl paper, this is awkward because this is B6. So I'm trying my best to keep everything in frame. So again, very similarly performing. And I'm really happy about that. My God, you guys. Planners are not cheap. Even with Kinbor, you have to like pay for shipping and such, you know. I'm very lucky because Chuyu is located here in Taiwan where I'm based. So Hobonichi and Chuyu, I would say generally speaking, they perform the same all throughout. They all perform the same, except for a few things about the Chuyu planner. Talking about the texture, because I mentioned in Bachuan is that there is a bit of tactile feel difference in the texture of the paper. Where's my Kinbor? All right, here you go. Let's take a look at the tactile feel of the paper. So many open notebooks. So feeling the page, they are similar in terms of smoothness. The weight is the same. Hobonichi feels a little thinner than the Bachuan of Kinbor. The Chuyu planner is the same in the texture and the thickness of the paper with Kinbor. And I do agree that there is a bit of a tactile feel with these two Bachuan papers compared to Hobonichi, because when you touch Hobonichi, it's smooth all throughout, but with the Kinbor and Chuyu, they both have, I can't quite explain. They are smooth, but there is some texture, not really texture, but they're both smooth, you guys, but not as smooth as Hobonichi. I think we can mention that. There you have it. And then when I touch the Take a Note page, of course, this is like loads different because this is 68 GSM compared to 52 GSM. And when I touch the page of this owl paper, Tomoe River Paper, this is also 52 GSM. The Kinbor one feels slightly thicker, you guys. But then again, there is the Bachuan of Kinbor is not as smooth compared to this owl paper TRP. If you just touch it like very quickly or without really paying too much time or not thinking about it too much, you would say they feel the same. So in terms of the tactile feel, it's very minimally different. It is different, but unless you spend some time and some really deep thought just, touching the paper like this for a good number of minutes, then you would feel some difference between TRP and Bachuan. Same thing here with the Chuyu. There's my experiment. I would say it's very interesting because for me, paper quality is very important, especially when I'm going to be using planners and notebooks for the entire year. The feel of it and the performance of the pens that I use are really important to me because I derive a lot of satisfaction using my writing instruments. And I'm sure you guys, those are important to you too, because otherwise this thing with the paper quality of Sanzen will not have a lot of talk online if it were not important to the people using it. So I hope that this video is of some use to all of you. And if you are curious about Chuyu, I will include the links to their store, their online store. They have a store in Pinkoi that I believe ships internationally. So if you're curious to try out their planners, I'll leave that link. But just to note that you need to take a look at the listing of Chuyu if they're actually using Bachuan or Bachuan paper. You can take a look if they are using these characters, because not all of their planners are using Bachuan paper. So I think it's good to take stock of what's available because we have so many options this year. So depending on your financial capabilities or your headspace, you can always opt for a bit of the cheaper option but performs the same as a Hobonichi in terms of writing instruments. I would say you get the luck of the draw with Sanzen, really. For me, it has worked really well across these three planners that are using TRP. But if you are experiencing some issues with Sanzen, you may consider looking at Kinbor and Chuyu. They don't have a Weeks though, but you can consider these two planner companies if you are still considering your planner lineup for next year. So I hope this has provided some sort of clarity to you guys. And if you're asking me if Tomoe River Paper and Bachuan are one and the same, I have no definite answer. But for me, deep down for me, it's slightly different. But if you have more knowledge or more information about Bachuan, please feel free to sound off in the comments. I would love to learn more about this because it's important to me. And like always, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop a note in the comment section. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next one.